Hello, world history students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have your notes for Chapter 13, Section 2, Kingdoms and States of Africa. We're going to start with West Africa. This is on the northwestern part of the continent of Africa. And we're going to start there because some of our earliest civilizations kind of begin here. So, in the first few centuries of the ADs, camels were first used in desert caravans. Camels are well equipped for the desert. They have three eyelids, making it possible to keep debris like sand out of their eyes. They also have nostrils that can actually kind of close up, allowing them to not breathe in sand during like sandstorms. So it's a perfect animal for basically life in the desert, and they were utilized quite readily within Africa and the people that were living there, like the Bedouins. Going on, salt was a very valuable resource to sub Saharan people. Because it was used obviously to preserve food, which could spoil quickly in the hot climate of the shale. The big thing to remember is that salt was really the key to life. Um, because there was no refrigeration, if you wanted meat or other food items to be preserved for a period of time, the key to all of that preservation was salt. And at times, salt was valued like gold. If you had access to it, obviously you had wealth. And what's interesting is, at some point in time, our Sahara Desert was actually an ocean. And within the desert itself, there are these little pockets of where salt is found. Typically, animals, kind of left to their own doings, can find those things. Animals, for the most part, need salt for their survival, just as humans do. But once those little hidden gems were found, traders would go into the desert with their camel caravans, mine the salt, and bring it back to the cities where it would be sold. And obviously, those people who risked their life and limb to go out there to find it were rewarded in gold in many cases. We're going to take a look at some of the different kingdoms that were found in West Africa. We're going to focus a little bit on Ghana, but we're going to talk about Mali and the Songhai empires, which all kind of evolved from one another. So kings, for the most part, were able to control the value of gold because they made a law that only a king was allowed to own large gold nuggets, thus limiting the amount available for trade, thus raising its value. So, because there was such a tight control over, the market, that allowed for the price of gold to be inflated, and certainly that brings about the value of that. But certainly, it could have been other products that could have replaced gold. But gold is now going to be obviously the go-to item when we talk about value. By the time we get to about the 13th century or 1230s, you're going to see the rise of the Mali Empire. Mali becomes one of these first really powerful kingdoms that's going to come out of West Africa. And their ruler was a guy named Sadata Kita. He was the first Mali king, and he prospered in trade and agriculture. And for the most part, he built cities and he built armies, and life was really pretty good at this point in time. Other rulers that would follow, a very famous man named Mansa Musa, he introduced Islam to the Mali culture. In 1324, he made his pilgrimage to Mecca, and he starts kind of in West Africa. He kind of crisscrosses the Sahara, ends up going through Egypt, and eventually making his way through Arabia. And along the way, he had a huge caravan, loads and loads of servants and gold and such. And he would offer things like clothing and gold as gifts to the different peoples that he met. And in a way, he actually changed the economics of a certain region as he passed through, because he changed the value of trade and currency just by bringing the extra gold and other trade products into the market. One of the cities that he is associated with is the city of Timbuktu, and it became renowned for its culture, obviously religion. Islam is kind of the center there. And along with that, education. Timbuktu had a university, and for a lot of Muslim scholars, it was a city that they sought out so that they could learn more about their faith. Mansa Musa showed wealth. Show of wealth created problems for his country's future because European explorers obviously had heard stories about all the gold and they came searching for the source of his wealth. And they tried to conquer the kingdom in order to steal its gold. This is during almost the beginning of the time of the Renaissance, and what's going to happen is we go into the age of exploration. There's going to be more demand on this region for its wealth. Moving on into the Songhai Empire, some of the greatest achievements of this empire were that Aska Muhammad began a Muslim dynasty. He obviously made his pilgrimages to Mecca, and the Songhai became larger and wealthy as a result of that. Sunni Ali was a skilled cavalry, used a skilled cavalry and a navy of war canoes to attack Mali. Eventually, Sunni Ali was able to maintain control of smaller kingdoms by replacing local leaders with his own representatives who were loyal to him. So, some African traditions, some different characteristics. Family ties are obviously very important. Extended families, clans, age sets. Age sets are basically people who are roughly your own age that you kind of hang around with. Sounds very familiar as far as how we group in our society. Religions. Animism is going to be something that you're going to see probably throughout the continent. This idea that there's a belief that there are spirits within certain things in nature. Ancestor worship is along with that, but you did see the introduction of religions like Islam and Christianity and even Judaism that are going to show up in different regions of Africa as well. Oral traditions, this is the art of storytelling. Gurats, histories, stories, songs, poems, proverbs, all this becomes important as far as helping people understand where they're coming from and their past. Not all the stories were written down, so it's that love of storytelling that allows people to have an understanding of their history. And then finally, the arts, mask making, dance, music, all of those are things that are very important as well. So let's talk about the kingdoms of East Africa. To Ascom, they were able to rise to power because they developed as a wealthy trading kingdom along the Red Sea, and they defeated the rival trading kingdoms of Kush in around the year 350. The Ascom started to decline when Muslim invaders destroyed its port cities, thus cutting it off from trade. Some goods that were traded in Africa's interior: coconut oil, copper, leopard skins, shells, ivory, obviously coming from elephants and their tusk, and gold were highly valued. And even in this stage, they're still valued. East Africa trade was affected by the monsoons, particularly that in the Indian Ocean. This is the seasonal shifting of winds that made East Africa accessible to the sailors from Persia, Arabia, and India, and sometimes even Southeast Asia. So, taking a look here at East Africa and some of the different kingdoms, Nubia kind of goes back to the time of the ancient Egyptians. From there, you see the Kush that kind of come to power, the Askams kind of along the Red Sea, and eventually you're going to hear about like the Great Zimbabwe and the Swahili city-states. So, Kilwa. became the wealthiest and most important of the East African coastal city-states because it was the southernmost city that traders could reach in a single monsoon season. Koa controlled all goods south of that point. The word Zimbabwe means Shona or stone house. The people of the Great Zimbabwe may have abandoned the site because the land may have become overgrazed by cattle and the soil kind of losing its fertilization and hence not producing enough to sustain the people that were living there. But if you take a look at these images below, there are still remnants of the Great Zimbabwe, and this is part of the UNESCO heritage sites that are being protected in this day and age. Thank you very much.